I will be very brief. To be very honest, I just heard the concept as presented by the good senator a few minutes earlier. I did do a little reading before I arrived, but I will try to share some thoughts drawing on what I'm working now, which is possible reforms towards federalism, right? So for me, if you look at, and that includes, of course, the political economy of these reforms. For me, the first thing that struck me about the presentation and, of course, the proposal is the serious lack of policy coherence that we face as a country, not just within administrations, but across administrations. We are doing a very piss-poor job at aggregating the preferences of our people and ensuring that these preferences are reflected in projects that are coherent across the political cycle. So if this is our challenge, I'm wondering to what extent this particular legal innovation might be able to help out. And I think it can help in several ways. If you're just thinking about incentives, which Dean Solon sort of started us out with, there are several features in the innovation that we might want to emphasize. One is deadlines. I think this is an important feature. I'm a little surprised that it's not already featured in many of our policies and laws. But I would imagine that if this were a performance-oriented government structure, there would be a deadline, just like our students face a deadline. A professor asks for a study, there is obviously a date that you should submit it. If that's not there yet, or if there's a need to provide a sweeping legal reform that includes a deadline as a basic innovation, I think then the service is already provided. Number two is incentives, and the incentives are carrots and sticks, right? So Senator Wynn talked about penalties, but I think there could also be room for carrots. If you are acting in a coherent way with the national plan, shouldn't you actually get something as sort of a perk or an incentive in return? Ideally, the perk itself is the project, right? So if you get an energy plant, then you should have economic gains that you should be fighting for. So that brings me back to the issue of policy coherence. Why is it that some of the actors are actually fighting the project, which we are trying to call a project of national significance? Bakit nila ayaw yan? Right? Bakit ayaw ng katutubo yan? Bakit ayaw ng local government yan? Bakit ayaw ng local citizens yan? Now, there's a rich literature in this, and I'm aware I'm in the presence of many experts in UPSE who've done work in this area. Put simply, in the lingua of the common man, not in my backyard is a common sort of feature that stops many of these projects. But it's not just the not in my backyard culture, no? No one wants a coal-fired plant in their backyard. You want to live there and face that every day? Obviously not, right? But I think the way our government and our political system sort of produces these types of projects, many losers are uncompensated or do not really see the benefit coming to them once the project is there, once the project is sort of operational, which is what feeds much of this sort of pushback. So I think if the good senator would like to incorporate some of sort of these features in what they're planning, I think if you go to the root causes of some of these conflicts, it has to do with these long-standing issues. The other comment I wanted to share is that it seems to me that this is a giant contradiction to the movement towards federalism, because in a way you are re-centralizing economic and political decision-making into a body that will decide, well, basically that's a project of national significance, and so therefore we are going to streamline the process, right? I think actually this is the challenge of our generation. I didn't say that because I am contrary to the proposal. In fact, I like it very much. But I do see this and other types of thinking on our industrialization strategy as features of our incapability towards collective action. The fact that you face these pushbacks over and over again on these projects, which should have been reflected already in our previous laws, right? So EPIRA, in fact, in many ways, I enjoy following Dr. Ortiz's presentation. I think is in many ways one of those efforts to re-centralize and, okay, let's roll up our sleeves and let's get this thing done. In a way, this is actually similarly inspired, I think. But even as we as economists may support this in the interest of efficiency, in the interest of industrialization, in the interest of generating energy and jobs for the country, we must always remember that there was a reason for the pushback for that centralization. So I begin to wonder if we go into a federal system, which there is sort of momentum building, how would it sort of square away with these types of proposals? The final thought I wanted to share, so I promise to be very brief, is the role of technology. And I am a student of this particular discussion still. I have good colleagues like Dr. Maharavago basically sharing with me her thoughts and ideas on this thanks to the EPDP project. But right now, I see that there might be a bias against small in some of the features of what Senator Win presented. And I'm not sure this is a bias that we want to keep in the way that we are conducting our energy policy, especially if technology might change the landscape. And again, I'm not an expert in this area, but as I understand, the technology is moving very, very quickly with all the caveats that Dr. Ortiz also mentioned, maybe not quickly enough on some areas, but it will change. And when it does, probably what we want to incorporate is some kind of sunset clause or some kind of feature in this innovation that allows us to recalibrate this at some point, so that when the energy landscape or the technology landscape is now vastly different, when the energy landscape actually favors small or might favor small, you don't necessarily want to create a bias in policy that lasts well beyond the landscape when it was created. And in a way, I go back to EPIRA, maybe this is something we want to think about also as regards that particular reform. Thank you very much.